Okay, so this week we're going to take a look at 2.5 sections, and most of it is just about writing the equation of a line. Right? There's different ways we can do it. The first way we're going to talk about on your guided notes is slope-intercept form. Okay, so we'll review what that is in a second. That's the y equals, and then I'll have you guys tell me. Now, this is just kind of a preview of what we're going to do. Okay? When we're going to be writing the equation of lines, there's 4 different kinds of problems you can have. Right? I got to give you some information. If I want you to write an equation, I got to tell you something about what I want you to write. And these are different things I can tell you. Okay? I can say, okay, I want you to write an equation, and I'll tell you what the slope and the y-intercept is. That's probably the easiest one. Okay? Or another example is I could give you a picture. I could say, okay, here's a picture. Kind of like this. Here's a picture. Tell me the equation of that one. Right? It's a little bit different. Now you got a picture. Or, what's something else I could do? I could give you 2 coordinates. I could say, here's a coordinate, here's another coordinate. Tell me the equation of the line. So we'll practice different ways of writing, different ways I can give you information, and you tell me the equation that I'm looking for. Right? So, I think most of the equations that we're going to do today are all going to be in slope-intercept form. Okay? So, no matter what I give you, I always want you to give me slope-intercept. Can someone remind me, what's the slope-intercept equation? It's the y equals, yeah?
mx.
It's the y equals mx plus b. Okay, so in the box at the top, you've got a spot where it says y equals. Just fill in mx plus b. Okay, there's some other arrows. We'll talk about those in a second. What's your m stand for? That's the slope. So m is the slope. What about b? That's the y-intercept. So on the arrow on the left, you can write, well, you already have slope. Okay, so you already got that. Does anybody remember as a fraction the 2 words we use? This over this? Yeah. It's rise over run. And the formula for the rise goes with the y's. That's how I remember it. It rhymes. Rise, y's. So the rise is up and down. And to get that, you have to subtract your 2 y values. Okay? y2 minus y1. The run, the bottom part of the slope, you get that by doing x2 minus x1. And remember, these are all going to be numbers. All 4 of those things will be numbers. You'll get a coordinate, and we label it. First x, first y. Second x, second y. And once we label it, then we just plug the numbers in. 2 numbers go in the top, 2 numbers go in the bottom. All right, and b, you guys just told me, that's the y-intercept. Somebody tell me a little bit simpler. What does that mean, y-intercept? It's basically where your line does what?
Hits the y-axis.
Hits the y-axis. So, let's say, let's make a graph. You guys don't have to make this graph. I just want to go like this. I'm going to draw a line just like that. Where does that line hit the y-axis? If you had to describe that as a coordinate. Yep. And as a coordinate? 0. Perfect. 0, 3. It's always 0, something. In this case, it's 0, 3. It could be 0, 4, 0, 5. Could it even be a negative number?
Yeah.
Yeah. 0, -1, 0, -2. Okay, but the point is, it's always 0, something. So that's the part I'll have you guys copy here. So as a coordinate, it's always 0, And then what number do you put? Oh, you put whatever number is right there. If it was a 3, you'd put 3. If it was a 2, you put 2. But it'll always be 0, comma, and then a number. Okay, so any question on that? So what I did on the guided notes is I put dotted lines where for each type of problem, right? So the front has 2 types of problems, and then the back has the last 2 types of problems. Okay? And then example 5, that's a word problem, but we're going to see the word problem. It's like one of the other types. Okay? It's not, the word problem is not a different type. All right, so the first type. How do you write the equation of a line if I give you the slope and the y-intercept? Okay, this is the easiest type. Okay, first of all, you're always going to use the equation we just wrote down. What was the equation we just wrote down? Y equals mx plus b. Okay, so under that first dot where it says use, you want to make sure you put use y equals mx plus b. Now, all you have to do, it says plug in number, plug in number. So we're going to have to plug in a number for the slope, and then we're going to plug in a number for the y-intercept. Slope, y-intercept. When I tell you the slope, what letter are you going to fill it in for in this equation? The y, the m, the x, or the b? Yeah. Slope is m. Exactly. So on your guided notes where it says plug in given number for slope for the letter m. Okay. How do you know it's the slope? Okay. You always make sure that you attach an x. Okay. Whatever number has the x after it, that's how you know it's the slope. And then the second line says, plug in number given for the y-intercept. And what letter are we going to plug the y-intercept in for?
B.
The b. Yep, so we're going to plug that in for b. And that's it. That's all you have to do. There really is no arithmetic. There's no solving anything. The other ones is a little bit more work. We're going to have to use like rise over run and all that stuff. But this is the easiest one. Okay? I tell you the 2 numbers. You just have to put them in the right spots. So you're going to put a number here. You're going to put a number here. Nothing else is going to change. The y stays right where it is. Equals stays right where it is. X stays right where it is. Just change the m, change the b. And that's it. Right. So let's look at example 1. So it says write an equation of the line. Now remember, the form you're always using is this. Don't forget that. That's every problem today. Y equals mx plus b. So example A says that the slope I want you to use is -3, and the y-intercept I want you to use is -4. Okay. Anyone think they can tell me what the equation will be? Y equals, but fill in those 2 numbers, but you got to put them in the right spots. Yep.
-3x plus -4.
Yep, plus -4. Now that's fine. If you said y equals -3x minus 4, is that the same thing? Yeah, that's the same thing. Adding a negative is the same as just subtracting. Either answer is correct. Plus -4 or -4. Same thing. Okay. But that's it. That's the answer. That's all they're looking for. Okay. Any question about why we put the -3 where we put it? Or why we put the -4 where we put it? Okay. Really, the only mistake you could make is if you put the numbers in the wrong spots. All right, let's try this one. Y equals, let's see, the slope this time is going to be 0, and the y-intercept is going to be -2. So the slope is going to be 0, and the y-intercept is -2. Kelsey?
Y equals 0x plus -2.
Plus -2. All right. Now, I just put parentheses around it because to me it looks a little, it's kind of weird if we write plus minus right next to each other like that. Now, what's 0 times anything? 0. So does that even matter?
No.
No. So really that cancels out. And all you get is y equals -2. Because 0 times anything is 0, so it's just like you can cross that part out. And all you're left with is y equals -2. Now, that's a special case. Remember, because when you only have one letter in your equation, it's either horizontal or vertical. That one's horizontal.
Wait, so that can be the answer?
Yes. Yep. If you wrote it as 0x minus 2, like if you did this, I mean, that's okay. But really, if you have 0 times anything, you should always just cross it out because it's always 0. Right? And then fill in a 0 right there and say, okay, well, what's 0 minus 2? That's how we got -2. Any question on that one? All right, let's okay, you guys don't have a squat. I just want you to try this one with me. Let's say the slope is 2/3. Y-intercept is 4. You know, I think they can give me the equation of this line. I'm just doing one more because we did a negative y-intercept and another negative y-intercept. I want to try a positive. Yeah.
Y equals 2/3 x plus 4.
Perfect. That's it. Y equals 2/3 x plus 4. And now, if you were going to graph it, that one would be on a slant. Okay? This part, you don't have to graph it. You can just watch what I'm typing in. 2/3 x plus 4. Let's look at how it would look. So the plus 4, what's that number called again? It's your y-intercept. And if you look at this graph and make it bigger, where does that graph cross the y-axis? Crosses exactly at 4. And the slope is up 2 over 3. Up 2 over 3. 2 is the rise, 3 is the run. So I just wanted to show you the picture. But it crosses right where we said it would. Okay, so any question on writing equation of a line given slope and intercept? All right, so that's the first type. All right, second type. The second type, you're still going to write the same type of answer. I'm still looking for y equals mx plus b. But I'm not going to give you the slope and the y-intercept this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a picture. Now you've got to look at the picture and you've got to find the y-intercept yourself. Okay? Just like this. If I gave you this picture and said, okay, tell me the y-intercept, you would just count. 1, 2, 3, oh, it's 4. You have to find it yourself. So identify where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay? That's what you can put on that second bullet. Some of it's already written for you. You just have to write the part in bold. And now what you got to do is you got to count. Okay? To find the slope, you have to count. So like in this one, what I would do, I would count, you know, like up 2 over 3. Up 2 over 1, 2, 3. Up 2, 1, 2, 3. So I can see there's my slope. It's up 2 over 3 every time. So now you're going to have to look at the graph, and you're going to have to count yourself. How many up? That's your rise. How many over? That's your
Wouldn't
run.
that always end up being a fraction though?
It's usually going to be a fraction. Yep. So it's always going to be a fraction. Okay? So you can see, always a fraction, but there's two kinds of slopes. It can be a positive, or it could be a negative. How do you know which one is which? Positive looks like this. The line goes up to the right. Negative looks like that. It goes down to the right. Right, so if you have to count up, that's positive. If you have to count down, that's negative. But notice we always go to the right. We're always going to go right when we count. We just have to decide if it's up or down. Okay, so under positive slope, you guys got a line. Negative slope, you got a little bit more to write. So you might have to use some of the blank spot if you wrote a little big. When you have a negative slope, this is how you write it. We usually make the negative in the top. It's not wrong if you do this. That's the same thing. But usually when you have a negative number, you put the negative in the top. And that's what this is saying. Negative, the top number is negative. Some people also put the negative just in front of the whole thing like that, kind of right in the middle. I usually do it like that. Okay, and you guys don't have a spot for this, but I just drew in a line right here to show you what a positive slope looks like, and then what a negative slope looks like. Positive slants up to the right, negative slants down to the right. Okay, so now second type. I'm looking for you guys to write an equation. I'm looking for y equals mx plus b. But now you've got to figure out the m and the b looking at that picture. Okay. First of all, if you look at that line, is that going to be a positive slope or a negative slope?
Negative.
Yeah, it's negative because it's slanting down. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. It's a negative slope. In order to write the equation, what are the two things I have to find? Okay. The slope and the y-intercept. Slope, y-intercept. What letter is slope again? M. And the y-intercept? B. So now we're going to find those two things, and then once we have them, it's going to be a problem just like this. You just have to find the slope and the y-intercept first. Let's start with the y-intercept. So you guys get the same graph that I have on the board. What's your y-intercept of that graph? 2. That's your b, where it crosses the y-axis. So y-intercept is 2. And now for slope, we can count. Rise over run. We're going to start, just put a number 1 there and a number 2 there. It says to count for a negative slope down and to the right. So how many down do I have to go to get from point 1 to point 2?
3.
All right, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Yep. So we went down 3. And how many to the right? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's write that as our slope. Rise over run. Since it's a negative slope, you guys told me it was negative, top number is negative. So, top number is the rise. We went down 1, 2, 3. So how am I going to write down 3? Negative 3. over, and now my run is to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. How am I going to write that? Just 4. And that's the only extra step in this problem compared to the first one. That's it. Now we can write the equation. Okay. Anyone think they could tell me what the equation is now that we've got those two numbers? Yep, Stephen.
Y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 2.
Perfect. That's it. Y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 2. And if I graph that on my calculator, it would look exactly the same as the picture you see right there. Any question on that? All right. So that's finding the slope just by counting the rise and the run, and then finding the y-intercept. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, so what I usually do is I go slope, y-intercept, and then I'll write my answer. Okay, let's start with the y-intercept. Princess, where does that graph cross the y-axis? Crosses right on 3. Yep. 1, 2, 3. So remember, two ways you can tell. You got a picture, so you can just look, or remember the y-intercept is always 0, a number. We wrote that down right there. So if you've got a coordinate on your paper and it says 0, and then a number, whatever number is after the comma, after the 0 with the comma, that number right there is your y-intercept. So let's look at ours. 0, 3. The number after the comma is the y-intercept. After the comma with the 0. All right, so we got that. And now we need to find our slope. Well, this line is horizontal. Is that a special case? Yes. If it's horizontal or vertical, that's special. This line is perfectly flat. We just did one like this earlier. If your line is perfectly flat, doesn't slant up, doesn't slant down, what's the slope if it's perfectly flat? 0. Yes. There's nothing to even count rise over run there. Another way to think about it, look at that point. Look at that point. To get from one point to the other, do you go up and down at all? Is there any rise between those 2 points? No. If there's no rise, that means it's a special case. So just a reminder about that. Horizontal equals slope of 0. Vertical, I'm not going to worry about vertical right now. Yeah, vertical is another special case. But vertical is yeah? Yeah. Does anybody remember what vertical was? It was so steep we didn't even have a number for it. We called it undefined. Okay, but we're not really going to look at that right now. Okay, so now, you could give me my final answer for the equation of that line.
Y equals 0x plus 3.
All right, so we could write y equals 0x plus 3. And now, can anybody simplify that a little bit for me? Yep.
Y equals x.
Y equals, well, what's 0 times anything?
0.
So what happens to the 0x?
Oh.
Now it's gone. So really, it's just y equals what? It's just y equals 3. Just to show you, if you graph those on a calculator, you'll get the same thing. If I type 0x plus 3, or I just type in 3, watch the blue one, and then watch where it puts the red one. There's the blue one, but just like the one that's behind it on the board. And now watch the red one. It's right on top of it. It's the same thing. It's just y equals 3 is a little bit simpler than y equals 0x plus 3. Okay. Any question on that type? All right, let's try, like we did before, I want to try one more with you guys. That's, you don't have a spot for this one, so you don't, just watch it. Okay, we did a negative, we did a flat, let's do a positive slope. Again, you can just help me with this one. Okay, that's the coordinates. You know what, we just used 3 on the last one. Let's go like that. 0, 4. And this coordinate is -1, -2, -3, -4, 0. Okay, let's start with our y-intercept. Someone tell me what my y-intercept is there? Yeah.
4.
Yep. Y-intercept is 4. And now the slope, is this positive or is this negative? Positive, because it slants up to the right. So look back at our directions. Where are they? Positive slope. Up and to the right. All right. So let me make it a little bigger because it's kind of hard to see. How many up do you have to go?
4.
Up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many right? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right there. Up. That's my rise. So my rise is 4. Remember, slope is rise over run. Up 4, right 4. So what's my slope here? 1. Okay, this is an example where the slope reduced. Okay, if you can reduce it, you always should. So your y-intercept is 4, and your slope is 1. Who can tell me what the equation would be for that line? Y equals x plus 4. Perfect. How come you didn't put 1x? Or is that the same thing? That's the same thing. If you put x plus 4, 1x plus 4, doesn't matter. Right? But I just wanted to show you guys a positive, a 0, and a negative. That's one of each. Okay, so that's the second type. Okay, so we did the type where they give you the slope and the intercept. That's the easiest. We did the type where they give you a graph. You got to count your rise and run and find your y-intercept. Number 3. This is where now you're not going to have a picture anymore. All you're going to have is 2 points. So your answer is going to look exactly the same as every problem we've done so far. It's going to be y equals mx plus b. Now, remember what we said. The number after the comma, that's your y-intercept. Okay? So when you have something like 0, comma, whatever number is in that box, that's your y-intercept. Now, your slope, you're not going to be able to just count up 3, right 2. Why can't you count? You don't have a picture anymore. So now, if you don't have a picture, the only way to find the slope is to use that formula. Okay, you're going to have to use that formula. So what that means is we're going to label, when we get a coordinate, we're going to label it. Okay, this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. Make sure we label everything before we fill in. So still got to find the slope, still got to find the y-intercept. It's just a little bit more work because you don't have a picture. Okay, so there's your 2 points. I want to know the equation of the line that would go through those 2 points. Kayla, even though we don't know the slope and the y-intercept yet, how is the equation of the line going to start? What's going to be the very first thing in the equation? Like in your final answer. It's going to be the same as the final answers we've done for the last few problems. I'm thinking of that equation. Like, what does the equation always look like? It's always y equals. Yeah, so we don't know what the slope and the y-intercept is yet. But we could at least do that. We know it's going to be y equals, and then we got to figure out the rest. Okay. Now, when I say figure out the rest, what are the 2 things?
The y-intercept and m.
The y-intercept and what's m? Slope. Okay. So y-intercept and slope. Okay. I think the y-intercept is easier to do. Because you don't have to do any math for that. You just have to know where to look. Anybody looking at those 2 coordinates think they can tell me what the y-intercept is? Yeah?
-1.
How do you know that?
Because it's 0 and -1.
Right. The number in the coordinate with the 0 after the comma, -1. That's your y-intercept. Okay, y-intercept is always 0, comma, whatever you see. All right, so we got that. And now I need the slope. Can I count on a picture? How many up? How many over? Why not?
Because you don't have.
I don't have a picture. So what I have to do is plug these 4 numbers into that formula. Let's start with -3. Is that an x or a y value? An x. Do we want it to be my first x or my second x? Second? Okay, we could make it the second. How about 5? Is that an x or a y value?
1.
That's a y, and it has to be which y? My first or my second? It has to be the second. Okay. As long as you keep both the seconds together and both the firsts together, that's fine. How about the 0? Is that an x or a y? X, and it has to be which one? It's got to be x1. And Tristan, the -1?
y1.
It's got to be y1. So now, carefully, we're going to fill in those 4 numbers into that formula and see what we get. First thing I'm going to do is go like this. Set up a fraction with 2 minus signs, because that's in the formula. Now, think of it as like we've got 4 boxes to fill in. Jaden, the box in the upper left is which one? That's y2. What's y2 in our problem? 5. Yep. So that's the first one. Olivia, what's the box in the upper right? Which one is that?
That one would be -1.
Yep. The box in the upper right is y1. Our y1 is -1. Now we got to be careful because we have minus a minus. We'll solve that in a second. How about Leilani? What's the box in the lower left?
-3.
That's your x2. x2 is -3. And how about John, the box in the lower right?
X.
That would be x1, which in our case is 0. Okay. Simplify that, and then we'll have our slope. We can write the answer. Julia, bless you. What's 5 minus -1? 6, right? Because that's going to become 5 plus 1, right? Minus a minus becomes a plus. 6 over -3 take away 0 is -3. Now, can 6 be divided by -3? What kind of number do we get when you divide a positive by a negative? A negative.
-2.
And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now you get your slope, you get your y-intercept. We can write the final answer. So I already got y equals. Yeah, Steven, can you finish that off?
Y equals -2 plus -2x plus -1.
Yep, so we've got -2x, and when you do plus negative, it's the same as what? Just a minus. So there's our equation. -2x minus 1. If you forgot the x there, you'd still get half, because you'd have the y-intercept, but you would have the slope part wrong. So just don't forget the x with that. Hey, any question on that one? All right. I'm going to give you guys a second to try that one on your own. Okay, it's just like example A. Let's see if you can label the points x1, y1, x2,
Does it matter
y2.
which is which?
No, doesn't matter which one is which, as long as you keep the 2's together and the 1's together. And see if you can get your slope and intercept, and then we'll write the equation.
Wait, how did you get the y-intercept?
The y-intercept is always the number with 0. It's the number after a comma. Yep. So as long as you've got a 0 and a comma, the number right after it is your y-intercept. All right. Let's start out with the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept here?
-5.
Is it because that's the number after the 8?
I couldn't know because after 0.
It's after the 0. It's also after the 8, but that doesn't matter. It's the number that's after the comma with the 0. Okay, so in terms of writing the equation of our line, we're halfway done. We've got the y-intercept. Now I need the
Slope.
slope. Okay, to find the slope, I'm going to label the x's and the y's. Okay, what do we want 0 to be? x1, y1, x2, or y2? Okay, it's got to be an x. You can pick if you want it to be x1 or x2. Now that we've picked that, you don't have any more choices. Everything has to be a certain thing. What does the -5 have to be? It has to be a y, and it has to be the second one because you got to keep the 2's together. What about the 8? It has to be the first x and the -5. y1. Okay, let's copy down our formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to set up my fraction. Put the 2 divisions. You don't have to put the boxes. I just put the boxes because it's easier for me, because I know if I leave a box empty, then I forgot something. Okay. Let's start with y2, which is in the upper left. What's y2 in our problem? What's y2? All set?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What's y2 in our problem?
-5.
Yep, -5. So we could even put a line through it. I mean, maybe you don't want to do that because you might have to still read it later on. What's y1 in our problem? -5. So we got that. How about let's see, who am I here from? Gianna, what's x2 in ours? 0. So we got that one. And the only one left is x1, which is 8. Okay. -5 minus -5. We just had that happen before. Minus a minus turns into a what? Right, so this really becomes a plus. What's -5 plus 5?
0.
That turns out to 0. And 0 minus 8? -8. And 0 divided by anything is always what?
0.
Always gets 0. So there's your slope. So, anyone think they could give me the equation, but simplify it as much as you can? Yep.
It would start out as y equals 0x plus -5.
So 0x plus -5, and then if you simplify it,
It would be just y equals -5.
just y equals -5. Yep. It's not wrong if you write the 0x minus 5, but I would just do that. Yeah, I showed you guys in the calculator, it comes out the same.
I did the X one and then the Y one.
That's okay. So you probably had 8 minus 0 in the bottom instead of 0 minus 8.
Yeah.
Okay, but it still comes out exactly the same. Yep. Doesn't matter. Still comes out the same. Yep.
For the Y-intercept, wait, so how do you find that?
The Y-intercept is always the number after the comma with 0.
So it's always gonna be.
I'll always give you a coordinate that has 0 comma something.
Oh.
In general, yes, you could have numbers here that are not 0, but the ones I give you will always have a 0 in them. Yep. Okay, so the last type. And the last type is really just like the type we just did. It's really the same thing. All right, so the directions, your first bullet says put in. It's the same directions we've done for every problem. Put in y equals mx plus b. Now, let me just show you what the problem is going to look like. This is what the problem is going to look like. Okay? We're not going to do it yet because I got to finish giving you the directions. But you're going to have f, a number, and a number. What you're looking at right there is really a coordinate. Okay? That's all that is. It's just a different way to write a coordinate. Same thing here. That is another coordinate. Does anyone have a guess how you would write this as a coordinate? Yep.
Imagine the F is like the Y and 0.
Well, remember, I said I'm always going to give you a coordinate where the first number is 0, right? So what do you think that would be?
0, 10.
Yeah, this is the coordinate 0, 10. And anyone think they can tell me what that coordinate is? Yeah.
634.
634. If you recognize that those are just coordinates, now you can do this problem just like the last one. Okay? I'll write down what we just did there, okay, just to explain it. But that's all you're going to have to do. So, it says on your second bullet, f in parentheses is the x coordinate. So whatever number is right here that I'm pointing to, that's the x. So the number inside the parentheses is your x. The number after the equal sign, okay, right there, the number after the equal sign is the y. After the equal sign, y. After the equal sign is the 10, that becomes the y. Now, this part that I just pointed to, you guys have already done this a few times. When you have a 0, the number after is the y-intercept. 0, 10. 10 is my y-intercept. So if the number after the equal sign has a 0 in front of it, that's like having a 0 right there as a coordinate. That means it's your y-intercept. Okay? I think the easiest way to think about it is just take what they give you, change it to a coordinate, and then do it just like we did the last problem. Yeah.
What is the define?
And then you're going to use this formula, which you guys just did on the last problem, to find, what does this formula give you? Slope. Or, what letter is slope? M. Okay, so literally this is the exact same thing you just did in the last problem. Okay, so we'll do one of these and then we'll finish up with the with the word problem, which is really like one of these again. All right, so example 4. Write a linear function with the values f of 0 equals 10. So you say the first one. And f of 6 equals 34. What that really means is you guys are going to come up with a formula that if you plug 6 into the formula, the answer will come out to 34. If you plug 0 into the formula, the answer will come out to 10. That's how we can check it when we're done. Okay, so the number in the parentheses is the x. The number in the parentheses is 0. That's my x. The number after the equal sign is my y. The number after the equal sign is a 10. That's my y. Now we have to decide, do we want this to be x1, y1, or do we want it to be x2, y2? It doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to make it x1, y1. The number in the parentheses is the x. 6 is in parentheses. 6 is the x. The number after the equal sign is the y. 34 after the equal sign, so it's my y. You basically write it as a coordinate exactly the way you see
Wait, what
it.
about the 2's?
The 2's. Yeah, we're going to do those right now.
Oh.
So those are your 2's. Okay. 6, 34. Basically, all you've got to do is like cross out the f, cross out the equal sign, cross that out, put a comma, and put a parenthesis. It's basically in the same order that you see it. The 6 is first, and then the 34 is the second part of the coordinate. All right. Now, let's find our y-intercept. Who can tell me the y-intercept? Yep. It's 10. It's the number after the comma with 0, or the number after the equal sign with the 0. There's your y-intercept. Now let's do our slope. Again, if you want to put the boxes, that's up to you. Okay, just don't forget your formula. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Hey, what's y2 in our problem?
No. 34.
34. And what's y1? 10. What's x2? 6. What's x1? 0. Okay. 34 take away 10? 24. 6 take away 0. And what's 24 divided by 6? 4. There's your slope. There's your y-intercept. Now we can write the equation. What's my equation? Yep.
Y equals 4x plus 10.
Perfect. Now I said to you we were going to come up with a formula that if you plug in 6, you'd get 34. Let's see. Let's plug in 6. What's 6 times 4?
24.
24. What's 24 plus 10?
34.
That's exactly what you're supposed to get. If you plug in 0, we'll get 10. Let's see. What's 4 times 0?
0.
And what's 0 plus 10?
10.
Perfect. That's exactly what we're supposed to get. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. The last one we're going to do is a word problem, but it's going to end up being just like this one. Okay. It's going to end up being 2 coordinates. So, last bullet you have to fill in. It says on that blank, linear model. Okay. A model is basically, think of like in real life, if you make a model airplane. It's like something that represents the real thing. It's not the real thing, but it looks like the real thing. When we make a model in math, it's an equation that predicts like what's going to happen. Maybe I have an equation that gives me how much money you make, right? If you work a certain amount of hours, right? that's an equation that predicts how much money you'll make. It's a model. If you did work, I could plug in the number and tell you how much money you'd make. Right? So it's an equation that represents something from real life. So when we are given a word problem, the goal is, and then you guys want to copy down the underlying part. The goal is to take the information in the word problem and make two coordinates out of it. If you can do that, you can take that information and make two coordinates, then the word problem is going to turn into a problem just like that. You just have to figure out those two coordinates from your word problem. And the last bullet says, then, what do you always have to find? Once you've got your two coordinates, you need to find your equation. And what do you need in the equation? Slope, Y-intercept. So then, using the coordinates, we'll find the equation, which is what Kelsey just said. And then I added, the equation is the slope and the Y-intercept. Okay, so that's it for the notes. We'll finish up with example 5. Does everybody have the what's after the word then? Okay. Do you guys already have the hydropower written on your
Yes.
Okay, you already got it. So it says, excluding hydropower, U.S. power plants used renewable energy to create 105 million megawatt hours of electricity in 2007. By 2012, they were making more electricity, 219 million megawatt. It says write a linear model. Remember, linear model just means an equation. So write an equation that represents the number of megawatt hours generated as a function of how many years since 2007. So all we really have to do is figure out two coordinates from that problem. And what I did is I gave you guys a hint. I made a table. And we just have to fill in those 4 boxes. So what's one year that they talk about in this word problem? They mention 2 different years. What's the first year they mention? 2007. Now, in this table, it says years since 2007. Right? What's the other year that they mention?
2012.
2012. Okay? So they mentioned 2007 and they mentioned 2012. Those are the 2 years they mention. How many years since 2007 is 2007? 0. How many years since 2007 is 2012? 5. Now, for 2007, do they tell me how many megawatts they made?
105 million.
Let's see. 105 million in 2007. So 105. Now, in 2012, do they tell me how many megawatts they made? 219. There's your coordinates right there. You write your coordinate exactly the way you see it. Keep the numbers in that order. The first one is 0, 105. And anyone think they could give me the second coordinate?
5 and 219.
5, 219. Now this problem is exactly like the ones we've just done before. We just had to figure out the two coordinates. Okay, what's my y-intercept? It's always the number after the comma with the 0. So y-intercept is 105. And now, to help me, what should I do to find my slope? This step is just to kind of help us organize what's what. Yeah? Okay, the first one is x1. What about the 105?
Y1.
Yep, you can make that y1. What about the 5? X2. And what about the 219? Y2. Now, just in case we forgot, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So Blake, what number is going to go in the upper left?
Y2.
Yep, and in our case?
0.
0 is going to be x1. So we can put,
29.
can put that in there.
19.
So 219. Yep, we put that in there. How about y1? It's y1. 105. X2? 5. And Blake just told us x1 was 0.
Sure.
All right. 219 minus 105. Let's see what we get. 219 minus 105 is 114. Divided by, what's 5 minus 0? Just 5. Now we can check if 114 is divisible by 5. If we get a decimal, no, it isn't. So we're just going to leave it as 114 divided by 5. That's my slope. So the directions in the problem said write an equation. Now we just have to write the equation. What's my slope? Yeah, it's kind of a lousy number, but the rise is 114 and the run is 5. What number always goes after the slope? X. And what's my y-intercept? Positive or negative? Positive. And that's the equation. Okay, so good job today. I know sometimes it's kind of hard getting back, especially you had the Thanksgiving break. They had the A week, B week in the same week this week, so you guys did good with that. All right, so a couple of reminders. Homework tonight is going to be 4.1. What's that? Yes, I'm going to give you the paper in 1 second. So homework tonight, 4.1. Reference sheet is going to be extra credit. I will have it by Thursday. If you have anything you need to finish up, like the take home, you have to come see me and get that in. You have 24 hours to get that in from when you take it. If you're out, you're going to make sure you email it to me. If you don't get it in, then it's a 0. Okay, so you got to make sure you get that in within 1 day. The latest you can turn it in is Thursday, which means you got to pick it up by tomorrow. Test on Friday. It's going to be a partial take home. So you're not going to have homework Thursday night unless you want to do the extra credit. Okay, the only homework Thursday night, it's not really homework, it's the first 5 questions of the test. Okay? All right.